"I came to bury my brother," the stranger said, his voice flat as a shovel blade. "Not watch you hang him twice." Every hammer in Eli Mercer's forge stopped mid-strike. Heat rolled through the open door with the smell of coal smoke, horse sweat, and sun-baked dust. Outside, the rope still swung from the cottonwood in the square, creaking in the noon wind. It had held Jonas Vance less than an hour before. Long enough for Sheriff Bell to call it justice. Long enough for the flies to gather at the dried blood near his mouth. The stranger stood with the sun blazing behind him, tall and trail-worn, his coat striped with dust, his jaw bruised purple beneath a week-old cut. He carried no rifle in his hands. That worried Eli more than a drawn gun would have. Peaceful men in Dry Hollow were often the ones closest to violence. It felt like weather trapped indoors, waiting for one spark to break loose. Sheriff Bell turned from the anvil, broad shoulders filling the forge light. "Town's finished with Jonas Vance," he said. "He goes in the ground by sundown. That's mercy enough." The stranger stepped inside. His heels clicked over warped planks, then softened in soot near the hearth. He did not look at Bell first. He looked at Eli. That was what tightened something cold beneath Eli's ribs. The man's eyes were Jonas's eyes. Not the same face, not the same tiredness, but the same hard gray that made memory feel like a hand around Eli's throat. "Name's Caleb Vance," the stranger said. "My brother rode 20 days to find me before your town killed him. I aim to know what for." A murmur rose outside the forge. Folks had gathered in the porch shade and along the hitch rail. Eli heard Mrs. Sutter whisper, heard a child hushed, heard grit scrape across the street under the restless wind. Bell planted both thumbs in his belt. "He murdered Deputy Harlan Pike." Caleb did not blink. "You see it happen?" "I saw enough." "That ain't what I asked." Bell's jaw flexed. Men in Dry Hollow watched for signs like that the way card players watched fingers near a hidden ace. Bell had ruled the town 6 years. Most people mistook his certainty for law. Eli knew better. Iron taught a man pressure. It also taught him that weakness ran hottest where metal looked strongest. Eli should have kept quiet. He had spent 12 careful years shoeing horses, mending wagon rims, and speaking only when iron or weather required it. A man survived the West by knowing when silence cost less than truth. But Jonas Vance had died with Eli's name in his mouth. Bell's stare flicked toward him, a warning plain as a cocked revolver. Eli bent over the quench barrel and lifted a horseshoe he did not need. Water hissed off the iron. Steam crawled up his forearm. Caleb noticed. "You knew him." "He passed through town," Eli said. "That all?" Eli thought of the night before, when Jonas had been dragged into the jail with his wrists tied and one cheek laid open. He thought of giving the prisoner water. He thought of Bell stepping away long enough for Jonas to whisper, "He stole more than my horse, Blacksmith. He stole a grave that was mine." Eli had not slept after that. Bell moved closer. "That is all," he said for him. Caleb turned back to the sheriff. "Then I'll bury him and go. But I'll see the body first." "You'll do it under watch." "Figured as much." Caleb reached into his coat. Men outside sucked in breath. Eli's hand dropped toward the tongs before he could stop it. But Caleb only pulled out a folded scrap of cloth and spread it on Eli's work table. A child's bracelet lay inside. Braided rawhide, faded blue beads. One bead cracked through the middle. Eli forgot the heat. He knew that bracelet. He had repaired the broken tie himself while his daughter Anna sat beside the anvil, swinging dusty boots and telling him she would someday ride faster than any man in the territory. 2 weeks later, fever took her before dawn. Eli had lowered her into the ground east of town beneath a wind-warped cedar. He had placed that bracelet in her hand. Yet here it was, catching forge light. Caleb watched the recognition strike. "My brother had it when they arrested him," he said quietly. "You tell me why a dead girl's bracelet rode in his pocket, Blacksmith, and maybe I'll believe your town only hanged a horse thief." Outside, the cottonwood rope creaked again. Bell took one step toward the table. "That's enough." Eli moved before he knew he meant to. He laid his soot-dark hand over the bracelet. The sheriff stopped. It was a small thing, a rough hand over a child's keepsake. But men had started wars over smaller gestures. "Where did he get it?" Eli asked. Caleb held his gaze. "From a grave that had already been opened." The forge went still enough for Eli to hear cinders settling in the hearth. "His daughter's grave. Opened." Bell's voice hardened. "Body gets buried now. Stranger leaves tomorrow. That's the end of it." Caleb's fingers curled against the table. Not if my brother was killed for finding something he shouldn't. Before Bell could answer, hoofbeats rolled in from the south road. Too many and too fast. Heads turned. Dust lifted beyond the livery in a long copper plume. For the first time all day, concern cracked Bell's face. Eli saw it. Caleb saw it too. Whoever was riding into Dry Hollow had not come for the hanging. They had come because Jonas Vance was dead. The riders hit town in a storm of dust and leather. There were 5 of them, all armed and rode hard, their horses blowing foam in the noon heat. The lead rider wore a buffalo hide vest and a white scar down his beard like rope burned into flesh. He reined in beneath the cottonwood, looked once at Jonas's hanging body, then once at Sheriff Bell. Too late, he said. Bell stepped into the glare. You know him? Knew what he carried. The scarred man's gaze drifted over the crowd and stopped on Caleb. It stayed there a fraction too long. Looks like it runs in the family. Danger changed the pressure of the whole square. The wind seemed to die. Even the flies around Jonas went quiet. Caleb came down the forge steps one measured pace at a time. You rode far to miss him. Maybe not. Bell's hand hovered near his revolver. State your business. Reuben Shaw. We're collecting property stolen from our employer. The man you hanged took it from a grave wagon 3 nights back. That phrase landed in Eli's chest like a hammer strike. Grave wagon. So it was not random robbing. It was trade. Caleb's eyes narrowed. What property? Shaw smiled. Something buried with the wrong dead. A cold shiver crawled over Eli's neck despite the heat. A winter memory flashed back sharp and ugly. A canvas-covered wagon on the north road. 2 men with no town markings, Sheriff Bell speaking to them at dusk while Eli, numbed by fresh grief, walked home from Anna's grave. At the time he had not cared enough to question anything. Now that memory came back with teeth. Bell said, There'll be no questions in my street. Shaw studied him as if weighing cattle. Then hand over the brother. The whole square tightened. Caleb's hand hovered over his holster but never touched it. Eli noticed that restraint. Not fear. Control. It made him trust the stranger more than he wanted to. Bell laughed once. Dry Hollow handles its own. Then Dry Hollow hangs thieves before asking who they stole from. That makes you either a fool or a partner. A gasp fluttered through the crowd. Bell's face reddened. This was the moment Eli could still step back. Return to the forge. Let sheriffs, riders, and grave robbers devour one another. He had done that before. 12 years of lowering his head had kept him breathing. But Anna's bracelet lay warm in his pocket. He stepped off the porch. You want the body buried? Eli asked Bell. Stay out of this. No, Eli heard the roughness in his own voice and scarcely recognized it. I'll bury him. Me and his brother. On the hill. Now. Before more men come asking what lies under our ground. Bell stared as if the blacksmith had spoken a foreign tongue. Caleb looked at Eli, not grateful yet, but startled. Shaw's riders shifted in their saddles. You don't make law here, Bell said. No, I work iron, and I know when metal rings false. Silence spread through the square, broken only by the flap of a loose sign above the mercantile. Eli had not challenged Bell in public once since Anna died. Folks knew it. Bell knew it best. At last the sheriff smiled in a way that promised ruin. Fine. Bury him. Under guard. Stranger included. When you're done, he leaves town. Shaw spoke before Caleb could answer. He leaves with us. Try taking him. For a breath the whole street leaned toward gunfire. Then the church bell rang once in the wind, lonely and wrong. The moment cracked. Shaw exhaled through his nose. Sunset. After that, we come looking ourselves. He wheeled his horse and led his riders to the hotel shade, where they waited like wolves beside a pen. An hour later, Eli and Caleb hauled Jonas's pine box up the hill, while Deputy Weller followed on horseback. Bell watched from below, arms folded, his badge bright in the sun. The grass on Boot Hill was yellow and brittle. Cicadas screamed in the cedar. Sweat ran down Eli's spine and pasted forge ash to his skin. Jonas felt lighter than he should have. Death always stripped a man down to fact. They dug in silence for a long while, shovel biting dirt, roots snapping, Weller's bit clinking below. At last Caleb said, You really buried your daughter up here? Eli stopped digging. Caleb held out the bracelet. Men don't keep a child's trinket like coin. They keep it like a wound. Wind moved through the cedar, bringing the smell of hot resin. Eli swallowed once. Anna Mercer, 9 years old. Jonas found her grave open 2 nights ago. Caleb crouched in the dirt. He tracked wagon ruts from the cemetery to the gypsum cut north of town. Said somebody dug up more than one body. Said there were crates there, lined in straw. Bones in some. Jewelry in others. He took the bracelet so somebody would have to listen. Eli stared toward dry hollow below. Why not bring it to the law? Caleb's face hardened. Because Belle was escorting the wagon. The world tilted under Eli's boots. Below them Weller called, "Hurry it up." Eli looked from the grave to the town, where Belle stood guarding whatever rot lay under dry hollow's skin. He had 2 choices now. Bury Jonas, say nothing, protect the small life he had built from ashes. Or drag every hidden thing into daylight and risk losing forge, town, maybe his own breath. He drove the shovel into the ground. After we bury him, Eli said, "You show me the gypsum cut." A rifle cracked from below. Dirt exploded at Caleb's boot. Deputy Weller had his gun leveled up the hill, and murder on his face. Caleb hit Eli hard in the chest, and both men dropped behind Jonas's coffin as the second shot slammed through the pine lid, spraying splinters. The report rolled off the rocks below like another rifle answering it. Horses screamed in town. A dog began barking and would not stop. "Weller's not alone," Caleb hissed. Eli risked a glance downhill. Weller crouched behind a limestone marker halfway down the slope, but 2 more men were climbing through the brittle grass beneath him, one with a shotgun and one with a pistol. Belle had not sent a burial guard. He had sent cleaners. A strange calm settled over Eli. He had known it only twice before. Once in a wartime smithy when shells shook nails from the rafters, and once when Anna stopped breathing and the world became too clear to bear. In that kind of calm, fear did not vanish. It hardened. "How many rounds?" he asked. 6 in the Colt, Caleb said. 2 in the rifle if we can reach the horse. I've got a shovel. Caleb almost smiled. Then stay ugly. Another shot punched through the coffin. Jonas deserved better than being riddled before burial, and the thought filled Eli with a clean, steady anger. "Can you run?" Caleb asked. "Can you shoot?" "Well enough. Then we hold." It was madness, but the hill gave little cover and no fast escape. Caleb rose just enough to fire twice downhill. The first shot clipped Weller's hat and flattened him behind stone. The second sent the shotgun man diving sideways with a curse. Eli used the moment to hook the shovel under the coffin and drag it broadside, making a thicker barricade. "Sorry, Jonas," he muttered. The pistol man rushed low through the grass. Eli waited until he was almost on them, then stepped from cover and swung the shovel like an axe. Iron edge met forearm with a crack. The man screamed, dropped his gun, and rolled among the grave markers. The shotgun roared. Pellets ripped bark from the cedar behind Eli and sliced his upper arm with hot needles. He staggered. Caleb fired again, and the shotgun blast ended in a choking grunt. For 3 breaths, there was only wind and the crackle of dry grass beginning to burn where powder sparks had landed. Then Weller shouted, "Belle says take the stranger alive. Kill Mercer if you have to." So Belle had already decided the blacksmith was expendable. Caleb heard it too. "You can still leave me," he said. "Tell Belle I forced you." Eli tore a strip from his sleeve and bound his arm once. "No." "Why?" He thought of Anna's open grave. Thought of 12 years spent calling silent survival. Thought of Belle shaping the town the way a smith shaped wire under heat. "Because I'm tired of burying what other men break." Weller pushed again, using smoke from the burning grass as cover. Flames crawled low through the weeds, spreading bitter heat uphill. Caleb snatched the rifle from the horse scabbard where the frightened animal had snagged itself against a cedar stump. He tossed Eli the Colt. "I'm no gunslinger," Eli said. "Good." They missed slow. Weller burst through the smoke at 20 feet, badge flashing. Eli fired on instinct. Dirt jumped at the deputy's boot. Caleb's rifle cracked over Eli's shoulder, and Weller spun downslope with a howl. The last climber kept coming, young and terrified, Belle's kind of courage. He raised his pistol at Caleb. Eli had a clear shot now. The boy could not have been more than 19. He also had panic in his face and one last chance to live differently. Eli hurled the revolver instead. The gun struck the boy's wrist. His shot went wild. Caleb lunged, tackled him, and tore the pistol free. When Eli reached them, the deputy was sobbing through a bloody nose. "Don't kill me," Belle said. "Said what?" Eli barked. The boy stared at the spreading grass fire, at the coffin scarred by bullets, at both men above him. Said the Vances found the cut. Said if word got out, the buyers from Santa Fe would bury the whole town in debt and lead. Said your girl was already dead before they used her box. Eli stopped hearing the wind. Used her box. Not robbed later. Used from the start. Caleb rose slowly. What buyers? Doctors. Collectors. Rich men. Bell sold them what the war left and what fever finished. Bones, jewelry, coffin wood if it was still sound. Pike wanted a bigger cut. Jonas caught him at the gypsum cut, and Pike died for it. Bell blamed your brother and hanged him before Shaw's employer could ask questions. Below the hill came a new sound, the thunder of many hooves from the south road. Shaw had waited until the shooting started. Caleb's face darkened. He never came for justice. He came for the cargo. The young deputy pointed toward the North Wash. There's a second cache. Bell moved it at dawn. Said if trouble came, he'd burn the church records and run by sunset. Eli looked from the smoking graves to town below, where people were spilling into the street in confusion. Shaw riding. Bell arming. Fire creeping toward cedar and fence. He could flee with Caleb now and let Dry Hollow rot under its own lies. Then Caleb said the thing that decided it. If Bell burns those records, your daughter vanishes a second time. The flames leapt the footpath behind them. Eli snatched up the rifle, kicked dirt over the nearest fire, and ran for the horse. Down in the street, the church bell began clanging in panic as Shaw's riders charged town with torches lit. By the time Eli and Caleb rode down from Boot Hill, Dry Hollow had become smoke, shouting, and scattered fear. Shaw's men had split the town. One rode for the livery, one for the sheriff's office, another for the church. Townsfolk ran with buckets, children, rifles, whatever their hands found first. The air smelled of lamp oil, scorched pine, dust, and horse panic. Eli pulled up by the forge. We stopped Bell first. Then Shaw, Caleb said. Inside the forge shadows, the old order seemed to linger for one strange second. Tongs hung where Eli had left them. A wagon rim cooled in the corner. The anvil stood black and steady among the orange reflections from the street. Then Eli saw the backroom door hanging open. He went in with the rifle ready. Bell was kneeling by Eli's workbench with a ledger open and a lamp tipped beside it, flame licking toward the pages. He looked up with soot on his cheek and a pistol in his hand. You should have stayed on the hill, Bell said. Eli kicked the lamp aside before the fire caught. Oil splashed across the dirt floor. Caleb entered behind him, silent as dusk. Bell's gaze flicked to the stranger, then back to Eli. You think he's better than the men coming for that haul? He ain't. None of us are. Maybe, Eli said. But grave robbing children was your choice. Bell gave a rough laugh. You think I started with children? Or started it? Hospitals wanted specimens. Rail money wanted transport. Then fever came, and the dead kept filling ground faster than families could pay. I made use of what no one else could afford to mourn. The confession came out plain, almost proud. Caleb went still with a fury colder than shouting. Jonas found out, he said. Jonas got greedy, Bell snapped. Same as Pike. Same as Shaw's people. There's no clean hands in this business. Eli stepped closer until Bell's gun nearly touched his apron. He smelled whiskey, sweat, and fear at last. My daughter was not business. Bell's jaw twitched. Your daughter was dead. The words landed deeper than a fist. Eli's vision narrowed. He could have lunged then, could have broken Bell's wrist or killed him with the anvil hammer hanging at his right. Years ago he might have. But behind Bell on the bench sat Anna's cedar memory box, the one Eli had built to hold the ribbon from her hat, a lock of hair, and the little tin horse she used to slide across this same table. Bell had ripped it open, searching for records. Its contents lay scattered in the forge light. Caleb saw Eli see it. He lowered his own gun a fraction. That tiny motion said more than pity could have. It said, choose who you are now. Outside, a woman screamed. Glass shattered. Shaw's torches were finding dry wood. Eli drew a slow breath through smoke and iron. Put it down, Bell. Bell's eyes shone strangely. And let this town spit on me while richer men ride away untouched. No, Caleb said. You answer for your own dead first. For one heartbeat, Bell looked ready to surrender. Then he fired. The bullet tore through Eli's shoulder and slammed him into the workbench. White pain burst down his arm. Caleb's revolver answered almost in the same breath, shattering Bell's gun hand. The sheriff cried out and dropped the pistol, blood running over the ledger pages. Eli slid to one knee, tasting copper. Caleb pinned Bell against the wall. Stay with me, Caleb said. Eli almost laughed. You sound like a preacher. I hate preachers. That should not have been funny, but Eli found himself grinning through pain as he ripped a strip from the ledger cloth to bind his shoulder. The absurdity nearly broke him open. Caleb grabbed a bundle of church records from under the bench and shoved them into Eli's hands. Baptisms, deaths, burials, names enough to prove Dry Hollow's ground had been plundered for years. Can you stand? Caleb asked. Can you drag him? Yes. Then take him to the square. Let the town hear it from his mouth. Bell spat blood. They won't believe you. Eli bent, picked up Anna's tin horse, and closed it in his palm. The toy's little metal edges pressed sharp into his skin. They don't need to believe me, he said. They only need to hear you. They dragged Bell into the street as sparks whirled in the red evening light. Folks stared with buckets, rifles, and ash-gray faces. Eli climbed the general store porch rail because it was high enough to be seen, though the movement made blackness nibble at the edges of his sight. Caleb shoved Bell to his knees below him. Read the names, Caleb said. Eli opened the ledger. Neat columns stared back. Anna Mercer, Thomas Reed, Mary Sutter's infant twins. 43 entries marked with Bell's private sign, each tied to shipments, payments, and dates. Eli read until his voice steadied, and the square turned silent with horror. Mrs. Sutter made a sound like an animal struck by a wagon. Old Reverend Pike crossed himself with a trembling hand. Bell started to deny it, then stopped when Eli raised the blue-beaded bracelet. It flashed in the firelight like proof made visible. That was when Shaw returned from the North Wash with a mule cart under canvas behind him. He took in Bell on his knees, the ledger in Eli's hands, the stunned crowd, and smiled like disappointment was only a delay. Well, Shaw called. Truth's out. That simplifies business. His men spread behind him with rifles across their saddles. Caleb stepped into the street. You'll leave the dead. Shaw rested one hand on his pommel. No. I'll take what's mine, and whichever of you still feel righteous can die trying. The sun had dropped low enough to burn red through the smoke. Townsfolk began lifting rifles, first one, then another, then another. Hope entered Dry Hollow carefully, the way dawn slips under a shut door. Shaw saw it too, and his smile vanished. He drew first. The first shot shattered the water trough beside Caleb and sent muddy spray across the street. Then Dry Hollow erupted. Rifles cracked from porches and windows. Shaw's horses reared, screaming. Another tried to wheel toward the church and caught birdshot from Mrs. Sutter, her face wet with tears. Smoke folded over the square while the church bell swung above it like judgment. Caleb fired once, then moved, never staying where Shaw could settle a bead. Eli ducked behind the hitch rail and worked Bell's dropped revolver with his left hand, his wounded shoulder burning hot and sick. He was slow, hurt, and steady. He knew angles and cover. Shaw cut toward the north alley, using the mule cart as a shield. He meant to break free with whatever cargo lay under the canvas. Bell, kneeling in the dirt with his ruined hand pressed to his chest, began dragging himself toward the sheriff's office door. Caleb saw Shaw's move and ran to intercept, but one of Shaw's riders stepped from behind the barber shop and fired at near point-blank range. The bullet grazed Caleb's ribs and spun him into an alley post. He stayed up, barely. Eli had the shooter in sight. Hard shot now. He exhaled, steadied on the rail, and fired. The rider dropped. Shaw saw the blacksmith still standing, then slapped the mules and lunged for the North Wash. He's making for open country, Caleb shouted. Eli could chase Shaw and maybe stop him before the Badlands swallowed him. Or he could finish Bell, whose lies had poisoned Dry Hollow far longer than Shaw ever had, and trust someone else to stop the rider. Bell's fingers closed on the rifle prop just inside his office door. Eli made the choice grief had taught him to avoid for 12 years. He chose the living future. Go, he yelled to Caleb. I've got Bell. Caleb hesitated one fraction, then ran after the cart. Eli crossed the distance in 3 staggering steps and brought the butt of his revolver down on Bell's temple. Once, twice. The sheriff collapsed across his own threshold, breathing, alive. Alive on purpose. Eli kicked the rifle away and turned in time to see Caleb leap onto the back of Shaw's cart as it careened past the last buildings. Canvas tore. Bracelets, lockets, belt buckles, and rings spilled beside tagged bones and straw-lined crates. The town saw, in one instant, what Bell had made of them. Eli seized the nearest horse, a bay from the livery, and hauled himself into the saddle with a groan that almost blacked his vision. He rode one-handed after them. The north wash opened into broken gypsum shelves. Shaw's cart bounced between ruts, mules frothing. Caleb clung to the rear rail, fighting Shaw for the pistol while loose jewelry spilled into the dust. Sunset bled across the cliffs. Wind hissed through rabbit brush. "Jump!" Eli shouted. Shaw fired backward wildly. The shot missed. Caleb drove his shoulder into Shaw's spine. Both men slammed against the seat. One mule stumbled, recovered, then veered as the wheel struck stone. The whole cart tipped. Wood cracked. Animals screamed. Crates burst. Shaw flew clear into the wash bed. Caleb rolled beneath collapsing canvas and vanished in dust and silver. Eli dragged the bay up hard and dismounted before the horse stopped. He found Shaw first, half buried against a bank, one leg twisted under him, his pistol inches from his hand. Shaw looked up, teeth red. "You ain't clean either, Blacksmith. You hammered shoes for Bell's wagons." It was true. Eli had repaired axles, shod horses, asked too little. Silence had fed the machine. He leveled the revolver. "No, I'm not clean." Shaw smiled through pain. "Then do it." Instead, Eli kicked the pistol away. "You answer breathing. Same as Bell." Fear entered Shaw's eyes. Caleb groaned from under the torn canvas. Eli pulled it back and found him pinned by a shattered crate, blood soaking his side, but his eyes still open. Among the spilled contents lay tagged bones, silver trinkets, and a small cedar board marked Anna Mercer in Bell's neat hand. Not the coffin itself. A salvage label. Proof clean enough to damn every lie from Dry Hollow to Santa Fe. Caleb touched the board, then looked up. "You came." Eli slid an arm under his shoulders. "Told you I was done letting other men bury what they break." Together, slow and bleeding, they gathered what could be gathered before dark and drove the surviving mule back toward town with Shaw bound to the cart and the evidence rattling behind him. Night had fallen when they returned. The fires were out. Bell sat tied to the cottonwood, badge removed. Townsfolk stood in the square with lanterns and one another. No one cheered. But when Eli handed Reverend Pike the ledger and Anna's salvage board, people stepped aside for him, not from fear, but respect. 3 days later, federal men from Prescott arrived with warrants drawn from the church records and Shaw's cargo. Bell and Shaw went south in irons. Letters went east and to Santa Fe naming buyers, doctors, haulers, and grave diggers. Some would hang. Some would pay. None would remain hidden. Dry Hollow spent the next month reopening every marked grave with family present. Whatever could be returned was returned. Whatever could not was named and mourned honestly. Eli forged 43 new grave markers with deep posts and iron braces. Caleb stayed to help set each one. He meant to leave after that. Eli knew it. On the morning the last marker went in, Caleb found Eli at the forge doorway watching dawn pale the eastern hills. The place smelled of coal, coffee, and fresh-cut cedar. Caleb held out the tin horse in one hand and the blue-beaded bracelet in the other. "I came to bury my brother," he said. Caleb glanced toward the hill, then toward the empty side yard. But if a town is going to learn how to live after telling the truth, it could use another pair of hands. Eli looked at him a long moment. Then he opened the forge door wider. Years later, travelers passing through Dry Hollow would stop at the cemetery fence and read 2 names carved into the beam above the gate: Anna Mercer and Jonas Vance, because the living had finally learned the dead were not cargo but kin. At sunrise, when the forge began ringing across the valley, they would see 2 men working in the doorway while a blue-beaded bracelet hung from a nail between them and flashed like a piece of rescued sky.